Welcome to another edition of Fix and Reich.
That's right.
I need some fixing.
That's right.
Uh,
So
do our little intro. Do our intros. People have to know.
Oh, right. Excuse me. That's not COVID. It's allergies. I'm Michelle Fix, and I do some comedy, and I've been in some fashion and some home.
Some comedy. La comedia.
La comédie de l'art.
The comedy of life.
Exactly. And I like flowers.
Yes. I'm Steve Reich. I'm an actor. Also a lawyer based in the New York City. Although I've been hiding in Boston for months. Not from COVID, but from my fans. It's not true. All three of you know where to find me.
Did it snow in Boston?
It snowed all day, and now, thank the Lord, the sun has come out. It's sort of like a microcosm of 2020 in a hopeful version.
Yeah, it did the same thing here. It snowed until about, 3 hours ago. And then it just stopped. And then I thought I saw a tornado, but I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Well, you know a little something about tornadoes.
Yeah, being from Nebraska and all.
Nebraska. You had jury duty this week.
I did have jury duty.
Now, you're one of the first folks to go back into the court system. I mean, they only opened up trials like
Monday.
2 weeks. You were you're like one of the first juries.
It was the second day, second trial.
Was it a civil or a criminal case?
It was a criminal case.
And it's over.
And no, I got dismissed.
We're not surprised by that.
It's actually quite fascinating to be on a jury, to be honest.
I know. I would love to do it. Now that I'm a lawyer, no one would ever have me.
Oh, they might.
No, because they don't want any. No, I wouldn't. I mean, no lawyer wants a lawyer on the jury because there's the risk is too big that they're going to overtake the jury room. Because everyone's going to be like, well, what do you think?
Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not, but it's not a risk you're going to take.
Right.
There's plenty of non-lawyers you can put on the jury.
Well, right now there weren't. One of the lawyers made it through.
A lawyer who was going to be a juror?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
but he didn't do criminal or trial or anything like that. He did
just transactional.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, I guess they thought, all right, at this point, when you start with like 80 people, then you're down to like 40, you're down to 24, then you're down to like 16.
Somebody's got to do it.
And you have to pick 12. I mean, you got to, you need bodies.
2 years, I think 3 years ago, I was in the pool and I wanted it so bad. It was a double murder.
That would have been so interesting.
Yeah, I wanted it. And they're like, nah.
Oh.
And the judge was so fun. There was like what happens out there, for those who haven't done jury duty recently or haven't before, they ask you a series of questions even before the lawyers get you to determine whether or not you could be impartial, whether or not you understand how the system works, all those things. So he had one woman get up there and he said, ma'am, there's a lot often said in TV and all this about circumstantial versus direct evidence. And, it's unclear in the world at large, but circumstantial evidence can be just as compelling as direct evidence. You always hear Law and Order like, oh, you've got a circumstantial. It's like circumstantial evidence is pretty good.
Yeah.
And so his example was an example of circumstantial evidence is that if you're in the subway and you see people coming down one after the other, dripping wet, shaking out their umbrellas, you can infer that it's raining.
Correct.
Outside. And right. So you said correct. And she was like, I don't know. And he goes, ma'am, what do you mean you don't know? She said, I don't know if it's raining. And I'm not putting on a voice. This is how she sounded. And he's like, well, but you can infer from the evidence of people coming down wet, shaking out umbrellas, that it is in fact raining outside, right? From your own personal experience in the world we live in. I don't know, maybe there's a hose. He goes, ma'am, you're just being difficult. And he tossed her. It was great with like a severe warning. It was awesome. I was like, yeah,
I
Judge,
love that.
Go get her. Because she was just being a little brat.
Yeah, she's being yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't even that she was trying to get off. She was just being argumentative. Like she wasn't even, I don't know. I'm sure she didn't want to serve, but I don't think her brain was operating at that frequency to be like, if I'm difficult, I won't get picked. She's just difficult.
She's a difficult person. Yeah. Well, one guy, he was in finance, and I was like, because I think the DA asked about motive, and how, a lot of times, her question was, I only have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that
That's all.
the defendant
That's all I have to do.
that the defendant has committed this crime. So I don't need to prove his motive. I don't need to prove this, that, and the other. Or would you? And then she said to him, "Would you hold me to a higher standard if I can't prove motive? If I don't have a motive, would you hold me to a higher standard?"
I see what you mean by bad questions.
Yeah. That's just a bad question. And so the guy was like, "Well, I don't know what his motive could be either, but he was like, I'd assume it was because he wanted money. Why would you do attempted robbery?" And I thought to myself, the minute you said the word assume, dude, you're out. Because you don't make assumptions.
Makes an ass of you and me and sends people to jail.
Exactly. You don't make assumptions.
No. Unless it's raining outside. And people
exactly. He was like, assume. I'm like, boop, he's out.
And they're like, That is a weird framed question, though, because it sounded like it was some sort of statutory offense where you wouldn't have to prove intent.
Yeah. And it's like,
don't get into it. Don't get into it.
But then the defense attorney, this is where I got her. The defense attorney started asking these questions she said, and, for each charge, the DA must prove evidence for every single charge. So you can't take the evidence from one charge, and then if there are three things that prove one particular thing, you can't use those three things for the next particular item. It has to be separated. So can you keep these separate and not mix together the different elements of the things? Now, we had only been told this was attempted robbery, right? So we're all looking at her like, what the fuck are you talking about?
What else we got? What else we got in the bag?
I raised my hand, and that's when I was like, are you suggesting that he has been indicted for more than one count? He's been indicted for 2 crimes? And she was like, oh, well, and then the judge is like, well, actually, I didn't mention to you that he's also been indicted for grand larceny. And I was like,
oh, the lawyer didn't know that.
No, she didn't know that we didn't know.
Yeah, that's actually the judge's error.
Exactly. But then I'm thinking to myself, this is not the way for us to find out that there are multiple charges.
Everyone seems off their game a little bit.
Yeah. So I was like, is it any wonder all of us are confused? Because you're talking about something we don't know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was very interesting because it was like, it just showed from the very get-go. It's like, oh, we're already fucking up. Okay, good.
Yeah. This is why A, don't commit crimes.
Yeah.
And B, well, it really is unfortunately why there's so many plea deals. Because this is your best shot as a criminal defendant.
Yeah.
You get a bunch of yo-yos being like, is it raining out? Like, there your face. Like, oh my God, I'll take 7 years, please. This is a great, we usually talk about the arts or sort of observational comedy, but this, with our stories, it usually goes to some celebrity topic, but I have great stories about courtroom antics.
Oh, I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
Yes. So in my other life as a lawyer, I haven't done a lot of trial work, but I did have what they called an externship. What the difference between an externship and an internship is, I'll never know. But for all intents and purposes, not intensive purposes,
of course,
I worked for a judge in Brooklyn for about, 6 months to a year, mostly just to observe and learn. Mm-hmm. And then, make some coffee or whatever. I was just sort of soaking it up. And Brooklyn law should be a show because this was civil court. And he handled a variety of things. He later made a name for himself in the bankruptcy realm where he kind of just told banks during the Great Recession to go shove it. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
He's a people's judge. But he was a real Brooklyn dude. And in his chambers, he's since passed, unfortunately, but in his chambers, there was all these pictures of him like shaking hands with the Sopranos cast, which half of them were ex-cons. So that's ironic.
Wow.
And, he's just like a dude. He's so So
But he
he's
happens to be a
presiding over
judge.
all these. He's like pizza guy. So he's presiding over all these cases, and one of them was about a dog near to your heart, a dog that was a breeding dog that was
Oh.
stolen from its cage
Uh-huh.
and got away from its captor and was found by the New Jersey, I believe the New Jersey uh, police, and turned over to a New Jersey vet.
How did it get in? Oh, I guess the
It
person took
was
it to the
across
next
lines or
state.
whatever.
Yeah.
And the owner was from New York, obviously from Brooklyn. And they, what happened was before they returned it to the owner, they
Neutered it.
they neutered it, and he sued, obviously, for damages. Not only, I don't know if there's a cause of action for like injury to your pet, if that would be considered injury, but certainly for financial damages if he was going to breed it. So, there was all this like arcane sort of, what right does New Jersey have to take on a New York resident's animal, all those sort of things.
Right.
So the judge, I was privy to know like which way the judge was leaning real early, because I would be in there with him when lawyers weren't there and he's talking with his clerks. And he had no patience for New Jersey's defense team here. He was like, these
Oh
guys,
boy.
these Jersey jerks, the animal control, whoever the hell they were. So he goes, the dog's name was Spartacus. And he goes to me and the clerk. He's like, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this Spartacus and I'm going to put it on the stand. And this dog is going to get up there and then he's going to get off the stand. He's going to take a giant shit on the courtroom floor. And that'll show him. He said, damn right, I'm going to give him damages. And this dog, it cut its balls off. I was like, oh my God, this can't be real.
Oh
So Spartacus was victorious. And I actually contributed to, I think, a law review article about it.
Oh my
A
God,
law journal article about it a long time
Spartacus.
ago. Spartacus the dog. It was all like
Spartacus lost his
jurisdictional
balls.
stuff. Like who had the jurisdiction to do that? Yeah.
Wow.
So that was just a taste of it. But another great moment was we had this really complex construction case with a bunch of defendants and a plaintiff's attorney. And at one point, one of the defense attorneys almost came to blows with another.
Really?
And he's like, I'm so sorry, Your Honor. He makes me so hot. On another time during what you just talked about, voir dire, where the attorneys are interviewing potential jurors.
Right.
One of the men was a real Brahmin, like blue blood sort type from a very prestigious law firm. And this was in 2005, 2006. So 9/11 was still the freshest memory around.
Right.
And he had an American lapel flag on his suit.
Right.
As he's asking questions to the jury, and then he sits down, and the wacky plaintiff's attorney, plaintiff's attorney gets up there and he goes, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, or potential jurors, I hope you will not hold it against my client that I do not have an American lapel flag on my suit. And the other guy's objection. And there's this like crazy screaming match. And they have to be like, the jury has to be kicked out and they all have to calm everybody down. So these lawyers were just ready to kill each other. And the judge, sometimes what happens is that there are a lot of legal issues that are not matters of fact that the jury has no weight over. It doesn't go to the jury because it's not their area. So
Right.
The jury's out of the room and the lawyers make arguments for the judge to determine what and what cannot go to the juries, right? So it's arguments of law.
Okay.
So during this procedure, the plaintiff was arguing something and the judge's clerk, who ran like a wholesale company out of the courtroom where he had like lockers full of Gatorade and all this random equipment, he had one of those like neon tickers, like the red, be like open for sale, you put on the storefront, it like
Right.
ticks across like a chyron or something. And so they put this thing over the plaintiff's attorney and it was scrolling, I'm a patriot, I'm a patriot, as he's like doing his motion. And I'm like, this is kangaroo court. What is going on here?
Yeah, what is happening?
What is going on? It was a big joke.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's horrifying. I'm telling you, because it's like any job.
Yeah.
It gets dull and they find ways to lighten it up. And it's like, formalities aside, this is what are you gonna do? Like file a grievance? I mean, you know, as
Well,
long the judge was even-handed, but I'll tell you, he fell asleep often in trial.
oh, really? Oh, that's not good.
Not good. But
I mean,
that's
at
what
the
like
end of the
this is
day,
why you do not go to trial. You always settle or plea. You always settle or plea. You don't know who you're dealing with, who have your fate in your hands.
it's true.
Oh my God.
It's true. Because I looked around the jury room, as I always do, and I'm like,
Yeah, 12 of your peers like means a lot. Like
yeah.
peers is a broad term when you
Well, no, what's really funny is like they named one of the jurors, and I'm like, why do I know that name? I'm like, I know that name.
Susan Sarandon.
Like,
Or
no,
Sarandon.
it was a very well-known menswear designer.
Oh no, she.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's why I know. Oh, that's okay.
Bored.
Yeah, I know, because I was like, what? But what was really interesting though is, like, as people were, this I've never seen before. People who were potential jurors were raising their hands, you know, because they had a problem, right? And they didn't think they could, you know, be on the case.
Yes.
And so the judge would ask each person, what is your issue? And like I said, some people had been victims, some people's family members had.
Oh,
one
yeah.
one guy got up, and the defendant happened to be black.
Uh-huh.
And it was an attempted robbery of a cab driver. So the cab driver, 99.9% chance that he was also a minority, right? Yeah. So one guy got up, Hispanic guy, and he was like, I don't think that I can be fair because I'm already biased against the defendant. Like, there's so much crap going on in the city with all the looting and the rioting and the thefts and the
which is
crime. Nobody said
barely true.
Yeah, but this is what he said, and I was just like, you can't like this. What are you doing? No. You just basically don't want to do this, or you're a complete asshole because, you know, like that's a bullshit thing to say.
What did the judge say?
He was like, but what about this particular case? I mean, the judge always brought it back to this particular case and the particulars of this particular case, which have nothing to do with anything else.
Right.
And the guy was still like, no, it's just there's too much unrest.
I don't like the blacks.
Well, essentially, he may as well just said that, you know, because it was ridiculous. Yeah. And then
was he a minority?
Yeah, he was. He was Hispanic. Huh. And then the menswear designer, who was also Hispanic, he raised his hand, and all of a sudden he was like, I just don't feel comfortable now. Black people and brown people are always assumed to be guilty, and now I just don't feel comfortable about this entire process, and I'm just not feeling comfortable. And I thought to myself, dude, it's 99% chance that they're both minorities.
Well, it's also not about your comfort level.
Exactly. First of all, the douchebag before you is a douchebag, so like let that go. Secondly, these are both minorities. This is not it's not a case of like a Karen who called somebody on a barbecue situation. You know what I'm saying? It's like, will everyone just be reasonable?
It's like, not the rambling dog case, whatever that was.
I know. It's like everyone just fucking calm down, you know?
Well, you know what it is? It's like you give somebody the floor. That's all voir dire is. It's like, here's your big chance to let the world know how you think.
Pardon me.
And nobody ever passes that up.
Oh my God, this woman in the front, blonde woman, probably in her 60s, PhD in journalism, writes for UPI, AP. Then they were asking her, in your journalistic, stories, when you interview people, what kind of information do you look for? How do you tell that people are telling the truth? So they were trying to get to her perspective on truth. And I was like, oh, I don't think that's a road you should go down, but whatever, I'm just going to watch.
Yeah, I don't get that either.
I mean, it's very entertaining for me because then she's like, "Oh, I didn't know that the victim was a cab driver. I'm dating a cab driver, so I don't know. Now I feel weird, And then she was like, "Now I don't know if I feel comfortable about this." But on the other hand,
we're all like very intrigued, like.
But on the other hand, like I fostered Haitian children, so But it is a cab driver.
Was this Angelina Jolie?
With the blacks. I mean, it was like, what are you talking about? I'm just like, what is happening?
Lights on. That's amazing.
No, it was totally amazing. It was just like, and at that point, my perspective of the whole thing was, listen, if you're going to get into it this much with one of the potential jurors, dismiss her immediately. It's like
I'm sure they did.
You're
That's
going
really
down a
good.
road that is just not going to go well for anybody. Like, just, get rid of her.
It's a
No,
fascinating
she
process.
didn't get dismissed,
Huh.
which I found interesting. Like, she was not dismissed.
Well,
So,
not at your stage. Maybe she was later. You can make it one round. You can make, there's various
oh, that's
rounds.
true. That's true.
Yeah.
There's multiple rounds. Yeah, but anyway,
I
yeah.
don't think she made it all the way. I wouldn't want her on it.
Yeah, she stayed for that one. I don't know. It was just really interesting. It was like really interesting seeing.
I love it. I don't understand why people always try to dodge it. I think it's about the most interesting way you can spend a couple days to. I
Oh,
get you don't want to be stuck on an indictment where it's. I'm sorry, a
no,
grand jury.
no, that's like a month.
Worth 6 week. Yeah, but
Yeah, but to be
pretty
involved in
sweet.
that for like 3 or 4 days, maybe up to 7 days.
Great.
Why
It's
not?
such an experience. Yeah.
It's also just fascinating study of human behavior, just in watching the entire process, because the attorneys are sitting there. They're sitting at their desks, and we're behind them, and they're like this the whole time.
Scoping you up and down.
And then they're making notes, and then they turn around again, and then they're like making notes.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Well, there's all these like pop culture stuff about and sub cottage industries about like jury reading, like the show Bull and like.
Well, Bull. I was gonna say Bull. That's the whole premise of that
I
show.
don't know a lot about. Yeah.
Missouri jury.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it, but I don't really think there's that. I think it's just pseudoscience. Like
I don't think you can. You cannot second guess people. Like some people are telling the truth, some people are not. So you just have to kind of go with your instincts.
I don't know what the jury's thinking. What you do, the reason that they have voir dire is you got to weed out all the definite minefield, like the landmines in there.
Yeah.
And then you just got to present the best case and the best, most persuasive story. But all this look at juror number 7, he fidgeted on the third line. Like,
yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Total bunk.
That's why that defense attorney, the female defense attorney, when she started asking questions, was asking just the weirdest questions. Because I was like, have you been watching too much Bull? Because,
yeah.
I don't know what you're doing.
You're slinging a lot of it.
But yeah, you're like, just do your fucking job,
Yeah, I mean, just, right. Like,
ask normal questions.
Well, whatever,
Like, don't ask these convoluted bullshit questions. But it was interesting. And the whole thing was like so socially distanced, and we have the gloves and PPE.
I mean, it's a risk. Good for you.
No, they did a great job. I thought they did a really good job. I feel sometimes more vulnerable, like when you're in Manhattan and you go into a deli and you're like, what is going on in here? Like, no one's wearing,
really
anything.
In New York? Where were you in, like, the Orthodox section of Brooklyn? Hey, Josh.
I'm wearing a